Welcome back to Scrapper's Situation Report, Episode 7. I'm your host, Bob Faust, and tonight we're going to talk about combat actions. So before we get into the 6 combat actions that your models have option to use during the game, we're going to go to the rule book, the Tome of All Ancient Knowledge, and we're going to go page by page through here to make sure that everyone understands some basic concepts, overarching ideas, design philosophy, whatever it is that I can share that will help you understand what makes this game system in particular truly stand alone in its field. And the reason I say that is because we have some conventions in this set of rules based on the Brink of Battle system, actually refined versions of the Brink of Battle system, that are truly different, and that's why the learning curve is sometimes a bit steep. So hopefully I can walk you guys through that tonight. I will say I got to thank everybody for the positive feedback from those who have viewed the previous 6 episodes. I think they're crappy, but if you're getting what you need out of them, I guess they're not. So when we come back at some point and do some really polished ones, that'll be even better. In the meantime, feel free to reach out to me on the Scrappers Facebook group or email me at sitrep@brinkofbattle.com with any questions you might have about the video content, and I'll do my best to address those things in future episodes. All right. So what I think we should start with first is basically the overarching idea of what the combat rules encompass. The 6 combat actions are mobile fire, standing fire, take aim, charge, stand and fight, and disengage. And if you've downloaded your handy dandy play sheet, you'll see they're listed right here with a very succinct summary of what each one does. But we're going to walk through those after we go through the basic premise of what the combat rules encompass. When you do a combat action, it's involving making an attack check at some point, or in the case of disengage, trying to get out of close combat. Mobile fire, standing fire, and take aim are all 3 ranged combat actions. Charge, stand and fight, and disengage are all 3 close combat actions. Hence the reason they were grouped together and not organized in any kind of alphabetical way. So when we talk about individual combat actions, at some point we're going to roll attack dice, and we're going to be using our combat rating versus the opposed model's combat rating to determine whether or not we hit. We're then going to use, if we do hit, we're going to use our damage check versus the target model's resistance check to determine if we were able to shock or wound them, or if there was no effect. And then we resolve whatever additional rules or movement might be part of that actual combat action. One thing that sets combat actions apart from standard actions is that every combat action has something to do with an opposed check. When you're moving, when you're hustling, when you're ambushing, those don't require an opposed check, neither does steady. So the only standard actions that require an opposed roll of any kind would be climb and jump, which are train checks. So in this case, there's a particular order that makes things simplified even within the declaration step of an action, but also keeps everybody clear on the page as to what's going on. So we're going to walk through this page at a time. So starting on page 92 of the Scrapper's Rulebook, we've got the combat rules. Of course, the first thing we do with a combat action, whether it's ranged or close, is we're going to choose an active friendly model and declare the type of action to be executed, just like we do in any other action declaration. So charge, standing fire, take aim, etc. Then we also pick the target model of the attack. Now, there's one exception to that. With mobile fire, you can move and then shoot, or you can shoot and then move. Player's choice. Unlike a lot of times in other game systems you may have played where I'm moving and then I'm shooting. That's not really realistic in my take. I would prefer to shoot and dive to cover or whatever, disappear into the ruins or the woods. So that flexibility is in the mobile fire action, which is why it's one of the most frequently used actions in the game. But with mobile fire action, you might not have moved into a position where you can acquire a target yet. So that gives you the freedom to do so. And that's the only exception of the other ones. All the other ones require you to have the active model identify the target model that it's going to go and either shoot or attempt to attack. Then, of course, you check for a break action, and then if no break, then you proceed to the next step, which is moving to the attack step. On page 93, we get into the attack step. Adjust that there. Model executing the action becomes the attacker, and the target model becomes the defender. Now, you remember back in the label section, way in the front, when we talked about the meta rules, the protocols of the game, if you would. Labels are very important because certain game effects only apply when the label they're searching for is attached. So anytime a model becomes an attacker, that label stays with him through the entire execution of that attacking action, that combat action, whether it's ranged or close. And the defender is the same. Now, there can be more than one defender, as you'll find out in close combat, or as in when we're using area burst or directed burst attacks from ranged weapons, which are hugely fun and deeply satisfying and rewarding on a visceral level. But that aside, you've got one attacker, usually, and then you've got multiple defenders, potentially, but usually it's just one-on-one. So the priority player, the guy who's controlling the attacker, will check for line of sight, target priority, and range to the target model. That's the first 3 items in the attack step. So, we've already talked about how you acquire line of sight to a model's body proper. You're familiar with that. Target priority and range to target are 2 new items. Line of sight we've covered already in previous sections, so we're going to go right straight to target priority. Now, we can argue and debate at the later date over a nice bourbon or such as to the, practicality of I shoot the guy that's closest to me as a threat, or I charge the guy that's the closest threat to me. That's the operative psychology in Scrappers. If 2 enemies present themselves, the one that's the most near and threatening to me is the one I'm going to be naturally inclined to attack, especially if I'm talking about shooting. If I'm a drilled, practiced soldier, experienced in dealing with the best threat versus the closest threat, then I'll have the ability to target whom I want, but that's the drilled trait, and that's something you can buy for your guys. It's just not the base nature of combatants in this setting. So, once you've drawn a line of sight to the target model's body proper, you've become the attacker, it's become the defender. The way we determine target priority is based on directly who is closest to me. This can be ignored if your model's base is 2 inches above the base of any of the models that it's looking to target. You've got an elevation advantage, which allows you to, as you see here, elevated position, allows you to pretty much pick and choose who you want to take on. Certain game effects will also allow you to ignore that, like the drilled ability, or even the synthetic advanced targeting allows you to do that up to a certain distance. So there are ways in which you can bypass that, but basic concept is I am going to either charge or shoot the closest guy to me. All right, that's enough on target priority. You can read page 95 with some of Allen's and Gibbs' great diagrams to give you examples of what the different scenarios are. So range is a funny bugger in this game. So I wanted, when I created Brink of Battle, I wanted to have realistic ranges for weapons. I too was tired of playing a game where my pistol shot 10 inches or 12 inches and my rifle shot 24. That to me seemed ridiculous, because if you've ever shot a real rifle or a real pistol, you know how far the bullet can go. The one thing that they have in common is that things get small at a distance very quickly, so they become much harder to hit. So the design philosophy that I need you to chew on this, and remember when you play this, is that effective range is the dividing line between what is easier to hit and what becomes much more difficult to hit. Effective range is the first number listed on a range weapon's profile, the first number before the slash. So for example, an assault rifle's effective range is 20 inches. Okay? If a range is shorter than 20 inches or longer than 20 inches, the long range penalty to hit the target triggers at the 20-inch mark or the effective range of the weapon if it's closer. Okay? Case in point. If we want to take something like let's just go back here to our charts and tables. I'll show you some really fast examples. Where'd the charts and tables go? Hell, I don't remember. If any of you have ever worked on a project this intense and this long, you'll be able to relate to what I can now relate to with others who have done this before me, and that is you really hardly have a hard time remembering what you did and didn't keep in the book and where the hell it all went when you turned it over for layout. All right, so let's go back to, there we go. Anything that has to do with rules before you play the game is in Section 1. Anything that has to do with rules during the game, Section 2. And anything that has to do with things that happen after the game is in Section 3. So let's go here to our handy page 70 weapons chart. So let's go down the line here. So we have an assault rifle. Let's see if I can zoom in on this. Da-da-da. Don't tell anybody I'm getting better at this. I don't think I am. You know what the hell. All right, assault rifle. Can you see it? There you go. 20/3/4. So the first number is the effective range of the ranged weapon. If the number is between 1 and 3 up here, as you can see, or rather 0 to 3, that indicates it's a close combat weapon. Anything that has a range of 4 or greater will be listed as a ranged weapon. That's a quick rule of thumb when you're looking over profiles. So the assault rifle has a 20-inch effective range, 3 rate of fire, meaning you throw 3 dice, take the highest, and it has a 4 base damage rating. Now that does not add to your con rating for your model because that only happens with close combat weapons. But you know, the fact that you're going to get a pretty decent damage bonus probably because the defender is going to be at combat half when you shoot him, that all kind of balances out in the wash. Then it's a long arm and rapid fire, and it costs you 40 supply points. The auto pistol is a better example. So it's got an 8-inch effective range. So what this means is when I fire my auto pistol, any target model in range up to 8 inches, if his base is within 8 inches of my base, will be at my full combat rating to hit. I roll my 2 dice if I'm doing standing fire, or since this is a rapid fire weapon, even when I mobile fire, I will still have 2 dice to throw. What this means is that up to 8 inches, I'll be at combat full when I make my 2 dice throw to see if I hit the guy. And if I go over 8 inches, I'll be at combat half, long range penalty. So the long range penalty, like all penalties, there's only one penalty, and that's half of your rating, whatever that rating is. So you add all your bonuses, you cut it in half, and round down, and that is your actual result for your long range penalty. Okay, so going back to that, 8 inches for that. Now, 20 inches for the assault rifle. 20 inches is the magic number because if your range is longer, let's say you've got a rifle proper down here that has a 25-inch effective range, the minute the enemy target is more than 20 inches away from the base of your model, you're now going to have a long range penalty of combat half. So, it's the effective range or 20 inches to trigger the long range combat half penalty, whichever comes first. Okay? So remember that, whichever comes first. That's how you remember what the combat half penalty is going to be for long range. Your maximum weapon range is going to be, for all of these firearms, is 5 times your effective range. Right? Now, doesn't that feel right? Doesn't that feel better? I fire an assault rifle. In real life, it's got an effective range of about 300 yards, but we know those bullets can go a hell of a lot farther. So even my pistol can hit anybody on this table. It's just that they're going to be small and hard to see, and if they've got any concealment or cover, they're going to be even harder to hit. But the bullet will still go there, and that to me feels awesome. I hope you feel the same. If not, well, you know, we all can agree to disagree. Anyway, back to this. So right here, the assault rifle is right at that 20 inches. So if it's below that, I'm combat full. The minute it goes above that, I'm combat half, up to 100 inches of reach. And when you play on a bigger board than the 4x4s that we're playing on now, you'll appreciate that, especially when you got a sniper rifle in your hands. All right, enough of that. Let's go back to where we were. We already covered that, target priority, so that's range. All right, now there's another range that we need to talk about, because if you're not within maximum range, you can't hit those models. You just can't do it. They're not going to be, they're too far out. So if your maximum range, 8 times 5 is 40 inches. So if the guy's 46 inches away from you, the shot automatically misses. All right? So that's how the maximum range happens. Then the other side of this, and this is not directly listed here, we're going to get back to this in a minute, but the other side of this is the point blank range. The point blank range is really, really important. And this is because in real life, as you like to hear me say quite a bit, dudes that are behind concealment and cover are all hunky-dory well and good until some other dude rolls up nice and close to them and dumps a pistol in their face. Or their, in this case, robot machine gun. Oh, hang on. Robot machine gun. There we go. All right, so my synthetic rolls up. He's got a combat of 4. I'm now within 4 inches of this model behind concealment and cover. I can now negate his concealment and shoot him where he's now combat half penalty on his defense checks. Okay, this will make sense in a minute when we get into attack and defense checks. But for now, just know, point blank range is the combat rating in inches of the shooter. And if the target's within that distance, it negates any concealment that target has. And if the guy was in ambush, guess what? He's also been detected. So if this has cover, if he's got a hard substance that's providing the concealment, he's got actual cover, he'll still roll that extra D10 and take the highest on his defense checks. They'll just be at combat half because he's at point blank range. So we've covered effective range, long range, maximum long range, and point blank range. There you have it. All right, let's get back to the rest of this. Now we make the all-important attack and defense checks. Let me reorganize my book here. Get some of my other scenery and stuff out of the range. Wait, I want to show you guys a little maintenance here. I'm going to show you guys how this does on our blackboard. All right. I hope this blackboard concept helps. We're going to move some figures out here. So let's just go ahead and use this guy. We're going to have him start without anything in between him and Mr. Machine Gun Robot. Back over here, Machine Gun Robot. All right. Yeah, I'm going to pose them so you're looking at their nice, pretty fronts, even though it doesn't matter in scrappers because they have a 360-degree arc of fire movement. All right, so let's go back to declaring the action. We're going to go ahead and take this guy with his machine gun. And with that machine gun, we're going to have... let's have him, let's go to machine gun. Yeah, he's got a 25-inch effective range, 4 rate of fire, and a 4 damage. I'm going to walk you through how this synthetic uses his machine gun to absolutely annihilate this true human architect. Okay, so here's how it goes. He declares he's got an action over here. It doesn't matter actually if he has an action or not. All right, robot has the action. He says, his player says, I'm going to do a standing fire action against that target model. Is there a break? His opponent says, no, there's not. Go pound sand. And then he says, okay. So he then takes that robot's combat of 4, divides it in 2. No, I'm sorry. I'm not doing close combat. I'm being an idiot right now. Takes his combat of 4, takes the 4 dice, which is the rate of fire of his weapon, and he's going to throw that against good old Mr. Architect, who's now ass in, swinging in the breeze, wide in the open, getting shot at by a machine gun. He's 1 dice, and he's at combat half, right? Because he has no concealment. So, if they both have a combat of 4, he's now doing 4 dice at 4, which is the lingo that we use. He's got 4 at 4. He's got 1 at 2. Okay? Now we'll go ahead and roll the dice and see what happens. So Mr. Machine Gun Robot throws a hail of bullets at this dude. And it looks like 7, 2, and 6. So it looks like 7's going to be his highest score of the 4 dice. Plus his 4 is going to be an 11 total attack check result. Go ahead and pull off this action token. He's got a, oh boy, 2 plus 2 is 4. That is not happy times. So we've got 11 to 4. Now we got a 7 difference. Okay, so remember what we talked about? That means this guy has a 7 damage bonus, plus 7 damage bonus. So going back to the base damage of his machine gun, which was 4, plus 7 damage bonus, now he's an 11 for his damage check. Okay? So we did the attack. That went through just fine. He got shot to shit. And now we've got a D10 plus 11 versus a D10 plus his con and armor combined. So he's an attack suit for 3. He's got a con of 4. We'll just call him an average true human. So he's got a 7. He's got D10 plus 7. He has D10 plus 11. Let's shake and bake and see what happens. Holy crap. So we got a 17 resistance check result for the architect. And we've got 11 plus 6, which is a 17. Look at that. See, the D10 can save you or kill you. It's just the ebb and flow of combat, guys. Gotta love it. All right, so here we go. This robot rolls up, dumps a bunch of bullets on him. His tack suit takes a bunch of it, and sheer luck and human determination says, go pound sand, you goddamn robot. And now we've wounded him. Oh, no, I'm sorry, not wounded him. We have done it's a meter beat comparison, correct? So its damage check result is a shock. All right, so the architect goes down. He's shocked one time. There we go. Bam. And that is an executed standing fire action. Ta-da! All right. Let's go back to our corners. Let's add some different things. Let's add, I don't know, bushes. Or in this case, these really disturbing mutated tree things I made. I don't know, of all the scenery we made for this board, this just creeps the shit out of me, and I don't know why. Okay, this thing right here. I'll put it right there. See, it's this fuzzy ball thing. See? I don't know what it is, but they creep me out. All right, so we're going to say that was sitting there, and this guy has that as some concealment. He's not within an inch of it. Angle this up a bit. There we go. He's not within an inch of that. Woo! That was a mistake. The robot comes rolling around, but when we do the line of sight check, part of this does cover part of his base. So as you recall, oops, let's move robot into scene. So as you recall, because there's any part of that is obscured by terrain, he's considered to have concealment. All right, so his body proper has a little bit blocking the base. That's concealment. Roll with it. Trust me. You'll be grateful down the road that you don't have a big-ass list of -1, -2, +3 modifiers to deal with. You got +1 to +5 on the bonus side, and the rating's half as your only 2 adjustments, and that will make for a hugely successful, succinct, easy play session. Trust me. All right, enough pontificating. Robot comes rolling up again. He's got the action token. He says, let's do. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to do a standing fire. We're going to roll his 4 death dice. Boop. No break. Blah, blah, blah. All right, we're looking for range. We're in effective range. We're not point blank. That doesn't really matter. So he's got concealment. So he's going to be 1d10 at his full combat, not combat half. Right? When his teabag was in the wind, he was at combat half. But now he's got concealment, so he's at his full combat. And this guy, he's not at long range, right? So he's not over the effective range of weapons, so he's good. So he's at full combat. So he's 4 dice at 4 versus 1 die at 4. All right? So let's go ahead and roll them and see what happens. Okay. So 3 plus 4 is a 7 total outcome. This cat's got a 9, an 8, a 4, and a 2. All right, he's rocking and rolling. So he's got a 9 as his highest. We pull that aside, so he's now got a 13 to 7. All right? Last I checked, that's a 6 difference. So the synthetics damage bonus is +6, and his weapons base damage is a 4. So he's coming in with a 10 damage check. And here we have Jan Architect again. True human with a con of 4 and attack suit of 3, so he's at a 7. So we've got, what I say, 10 versus 7. All right, here we go. Oh, look at that. All right, so 7 plus 8, 17, and 10 plus 10 is 20. So that is, again, a shocked result because it's not 5 or more. A true human's wound threshold is 5 or more. Let's just change the dice. Let's pretend he rolled a 2 plus his 7, so he's a 9 versus a 20. Well, that's 11-point difference. It's 5 or more over what he has as a resistance check, so it would completely wound the architect model. All right? That's the way wound threshold works. If he were a mutant, and yes, he could be a mutant in that same completely beautiful little true human body, because not all mutants are A, sport and physical mutations, and or B, don't look normal. I mean, he could be purple and, pink polka dot skin underneath all that gear, who knows. But if he was a mutant, his wound threshold would be a 6+. So this damage check would have to exceed the total resistance check by 6 or more points for that to be a wound and not a shock, and so forth. All right. Hope that clears that up. Okay, so we've covered all that. Let's go through a few of the different, and really, guys, that's it. I mean, that's the nutshell. So with that in mind, now you have a walkthrough of the damage check and all that for the ranged attacks. Let's go through the other two, since we've done standing fire on both of these. Let's throw one more scenario in here for standing fire just to explain cover and concealment combined. And then we'll move on to mobile fire and take aim. Okay. And oh, by the way, for those of you who have read the rules or have played this before or have played Brink of Battle, you're probably wondering why I left the gear checks out of the episode 4 video on how to make the different checks in the game. And that's because the gear checks usually show up as weapon gear checks during combat. So I wanted to keep that more topical, whereas all the other stuff is pretty good in one section. This one in particular I wanted to show in relations to the combat actions we have. Okay, now, he's behind concealment, and it's hard. It's made of substance. So if it's made of metal, wood, cast iron, dirt, anything that's really hard-packed, provides actual physical protection as a piece of concealing terrain, then it's considered to be cover as well as concealment. So going back to the same scenario, Mr. Happy Robot Dude, who by the way is one of the Brotherhood of Iron from MicroArt Studios, who absolutely dig the living shit out of. Those guys are awesome. Sorry. That's who's shooting down a major machine gun attack here. And of course my as I call them, my space masons, my architects from Pig Iron's System Scrappers range with the System Trooper helmets. When I saw these figures, I told Alex Spade, I wrote to him and I said, man, thanks for all the donated stuff you sent us. We'll get all of it painted up and shown off at some point here, for the book and for the videos and battle reports, articles. But those System Scrappers are absolutely my mind's eye vision for what my architects look like. And so they were the one piece of restock that we had to wait on. And I was telling Drew, I'm like, oh my God, I hope the boat from England gets here fast, because we're getting close to the due date, and I didn't have my vision of the architects made manifest. So yeah, these guys absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, okay, I'll go touch myself and these architects later. In the meantime, he's got concealment and cover. So we execute the action. Instead of just one D10, he now gets to roll an extra D10 and take the highest of the two for his defense checks. Because he's got concealment, it's going to be at combat 4, his full combat, and he gets the extra die because it's going to be actual physical protection. So we roll the 4 and the 6 and the 2 more, and this is what we get. We get 8, 3, 6, and 5. Okay, so we're going to take the 8, the rest go away. And when we get into, we're not going to cover it in this video series immediately, but we're going to go and do some later episodes where I do an absolute deep dive on all the special gear rules, the traits, all of that stuff. So you guys will have, as time goes on and our community continues to build, and you guys start playing more games,